100 years after Britain entered the First World War, they are still fighting and dying for its legacy tonight in Gaza and Israel. Good evening from Jerusalem. As the world pauses to remember a war 1 century ago, we report tonight from the modern conflict whose roots are firmly planted in that history. The war in Gaza is back on. Israel's partial break in bombing today over. It didn't apply around the southern city of Rafah anyway. From the Gazan town of Zaytun, another trail of children lost and homes devastated. 100 years ago, it was British soldiers fighting on this ground. Tonight, how Palestinians hold the post-war deals done by the West responsible for their current misery.
The British government promised there'd be a home for Jewish people in Palestine. That war created realities on the ground we all still live with, and this one will do the same.
And I've been down one of the tunnels used by Hamas to attack Israeli soldiers. The father of one killed last week joins us live.
And I'm at Westminster Abbey, where a century after the lamps went out all over Europe, the flame at the grave of the unknown warrior will in just a few hours' time be extinguished. A candlelit vigil here is the culmination of a day of reflection and remembrance. At Glasgow Cathedral, the Prime Minister and Prince of Wales honoured the millions who answered the call to arms and the blood they spilled. Across Britain, cities, towns and villages are commemorating the war that changed the world.
I'm in Belgium, here at the Saint-Symphorien Cemetery, where royalty and heads of states are gathering near Mons to commemorate the fallen. It was here in Belgium in August 1914 that the Germans started to commit atrocities. I've been speaking to the last living survivor of the sacking of Leuven.
Papa nous protège.
Papa protected us, so we had to obey him because he was doing it for our own good. If you make a noise, the Germans will come down and kill you.
World leaders and royals have been paying tribute to the power of reconciliation 100 years on from the start of the First World War in moving commemorations across Europe. But here, in the middle of a brutal ongoing war, and one which is in part caused by the deals stitched up at the end of the 1914-18 war, reconciliation is a long way away. David Cameron today said this slaughter, this killing, has got to end. The government's looking into reports a British aid worker may be among the dead. Today, a partial Israeli ceasefire slowed the violence in Gaza, but attacks have tonight resumed. First, our correspondent Paul Mason is in Gaza City. Paul.
Well, Krishnan, on this side of the border, we've been getting a lesson in what ceasefires mean. The Israelis declared one and broke it within 10 minutes. In the town of Rafah, the fighting seems to have died back a bit, but they're picking up a lot of bodies. Behind me tonight, the rumble of artillery carries on. More people will die here overnight. That's the picture here in Gaza, and it was a day when people tried to pick up the pieces. Nevertheless, my report starts with some scenes of destruction. Just 10 minutes after their own ceasefire started, Israel struck a house in the beach refugee camp, Gaza City. Officials said an 8-year-old girl was killed, 29 people wounded, and rescuers believe 3 are still alive beneath the rubble. There was at least one strike by Hamas on an Israeli staging area with mortar fire, and then there was, in much of Gaza, calm. Before today's ceasefire started, the Qassim brigades, the military wing of Hamas, issued their demands for ending the fighting. They include freedom, dignity, security. But what does that really mean? In search of an answer, I went to the Gaza City suburb of Zaytun. Here, the graffiti tells a political story, the old left-wing guerrilla movement overpainted with the green of Hamas. It's a poor, crowded area, catching a loose foal more welcome excitement than sheltering from F-16s.
There is no work. There is no water, there is no electricity, there is no medicine, there is no anything. My husband have, from I married to now, they haven't got any work. Why? Why? Why?
People will say in the West that's because Hamas runs Gaza.
We want a country, and our country is come Israel to his, and you want us no فصيل معارض.
The phrase she's using means opposition party. Though a supporter of the mainstream PLO, she does see Hamas as legitimate. The ceasefire let us into parts of Zaytun that were being shelled last time we tried. Much of it now is wrecked. These were ordinary homes. And even now, the Israeli troops are less than 3 kilometers away. What will people around here accept as the terms of a ceasefire?
They will not accept at least to stop siege.
Stop the siege?
Yeah, this is the minimum required. We require.
And if the siege carries on, what?
Nothing will happen. We are dying anyway. We are dying before war, we are dying through war, we are dying after the war.
Some people have seen more war than peace. This man was just 19 when the Palestinians were expelled from what's now Israel in 1948. And when he finds out my nationality, it gets interesting.
I remember when the British were here. They're the cause of the problem. Since then, the Israelis have destroyed everything.
There's one more place I want to see while the ceasefire holds. The British War Cemetery. There's been no ceremony today, only quiet. Blimey. Can we have a look? Can we have a look? Can you carry it? It's taken a couple of Israeli shells in this war. One, luckily, did not go off.
That's a rifled tank shell there.
For both sides in this war, this corner of a foreign field is significant.
It took these soldiers the best part of a year to fight their way to Gaza, and when they did, the British government promised there'd be a home for Jewish people in Palestine. That war created realities on the ground we all still live with, and this one will do the same.
There are 727 Brits, Anzacs and Indian troops buried here from 1917. The Palestinians have lost more than twice that many civilians in the past month. Well, it was poignant there, being in that cemetery today. It's quiet, very well kept, but there doesn't seem to be any visitors there for the past month. When you look at what happened and the historical context of the men who ended up in that cemetery, it does seem a little bit like history repeating itself. Almost 100 years ago, troops from Britain and its empire descended on this place to force out the Turks of the Ottoman Empire. Thousands of lives were lost, districts were ruined and mosques destroyed, including the ancient Omari Mosque, which was damaged. At the time, the British said Turks were using the Great Mosque as an ammunition dump. The Turks paid the penalty for their sacrilegious trickery. Today, several big mosques stand in ruins. Israel says they were sheltering weapons caches and Hamas command and training facilities. The big picture here remains that both sides seem to be winding down. The Israelis pulling back, striking specific targets, the resistance here, occasional rocket and mortar fire into Israel. But the big looming story, as we've been reporting for the past few days, is the humanitarian crisis, which with every day, notwithstanding the medical aid that was brought in from Israel today to this place, is looming and is big. And with that, Krishnan, that is all from me in Gaza. Over to you now in Jerusalem.
Thank you, Paul. Well, there have been violent incidents here in Jerusalem today too, and our reporter Inigo Gilmore is with me now. What's happened?
Well, according to Israeli police, earlier today, a Palestinian man driving a digger initially knocked down an Israeli man, killing him at a construction site, and then drove this digger towards a bus, flipping over the bus and then tearing into the bus with the digger before he was shot dead by the police. The police say The man in question, the man who was shot dead is from East Jerusalem, and his family are now being questioned by police about his identity and possible links to any kind of groups. Subsequent to that, there was a shooting of an Israeli soldier, we understand, in another Jerusalem street. This apparently from the back of a motorbike, a drive-by shooting. Again, police looking and stopping and searching a number of Palestinians, they say, on motorbikes. All of this has contributed to a great sense of tension, another layer of tension in this city. The streets are largely empty around here, police everywhere, and this is very much a city on edge tonight.
Thanks, Inigo. Well, Israel has claimed throughout the conflict that its key objective is to stop Hamas being able to attack Israel through its long network of tunnels. And earlier today, I got access to what some here call terror tunnels within 1 kilometre of the border with Gaza.
Basically very close. You can see Gaza there on the other side, and we just came from...
The mission to destroy Hamas's network of tunnels is almost complete, says the Israeli Defense Force, but there are still some to show what they say is the terrorist threat.
This tunnel goes on the one hand into the Gaza Strip about 1.5 kilometers, and on the other hand it's about 600 meters inside Israeli territory, basically very close to a kibbutz. This opening, so this right one goes to Israel, the left one goes to the Gaza Strip, and we have basically discovered it in the middle.
So this would go further into Israel?
Exactly.
So the total length of this tunnel into Israel is about over 2 kilometres?
Yes.
It's astonishingly well built, concrete lined, wired for electricity. Tracks removed the earth as they dug.
If you look at this operation, this is nothing you can just build in a year or two. This takes longer.
But there must have been lots of people working down here for a long time.
Exactly.
And you had no idea it was going on?
Several years. It's very hard to understand exactly where the tunnels go because they built them beneath the buildings, civilian buildings, just regular buildings, regular hospitals. They go down. It's very hard to track them. And they have built dozens of these ones.
How many new tunnels have you discovered in the last 3 weeks?
We have discovered dozens of tunnels. Dozens of tunnels.
Isn't that a massive intelligence failure?
Well, listen, we have, during the last 2-3 weeks, we have basically destroyed almost every tunnel which leads to Israel inside the Gaza Strip.
But before the operation started,
yeah,
these tunnels existed. They weren't being used, were they, for terror
because
operations?
they usually, the last couple of meters, they leave closed, and they use them whenever they need to use them. So they tried. During the last 2 weeks, they tried at least 5 times. 5 times at least they came out on Israeli territory with boots on the ground.
Last week, 5 Israeli soldiers were killed when a Hamas squad did just that. But after the massive bombardment of Gaza, Hamas and civilians, Israel's sense of security remains tenuous. Tony Stadden, originally from Bristol, now lives on the kibbutz where the tunnel we were shown was found.
Any moments, terrorists could come out with the sole intent to kill Israeli people.
So do you feel safer now?
I can tell you a little bit safer, but not safe.
With most of the tunnels destroyed, Israel is pulling back more of its troops. But Prime Minister Netanyahu still thinks he can bomb Hamas into submission, saying today it will only end with a prolonged period of quiet for Israelis. Well, with me now is Yaron Shaw, whose 21-year-old son, Sergeant Barkeh Shaw, is one of more than 60 Israeli soldiers killed in this conflict. He was one of the 5 victims of that Hamas squad which came through the tunnel last week. Thank you very much indeed for joining us, and my condolences for your loss. So many people have lost children over the last 2 or 3 weeks. Have you been able to make any sense of this conflict yourself?
Every one of our children. I cannot speak in the name of all the fathers. I wanted to say about one child, my private child, who was a very, very good boy, very charitable deeds. All his desire was to help other people. And he went to be in the army to defend his country, our home. And all the other people, I hear about a lot of young soldiers who died in this combat. And I mourn every one of them.
And presumably you're able to empathize with the people on the other side of that border as well, and so many lives lost there.
I think that every child is a pearl to his mother and father. Everyone desires that his son will follow his footsteps, will continue his heritage. But our heritage is to take care of our children. When we try to protect our children, when we have a danger, we take the children from the area of war towards a peaceful area. We don't try to sacrifice our sons. We love our lives, but I'm not sure that all the people who were killed in the other side, they don't like the death of a shaheed as much as we like our lives. That's the Hamas, what he said all the time. We don't want to kill anyone. We don't want to take their land. We wanted to protect our lives.
So even after suffering such a loss, you're able to support this operation going on, are you?
If I may say one word about my family and my wife's family. My family is 180 years in Israel, but my wife's family came from Europe after the Holocaust. Most of the family was perished during the Holocaust. No one can protect ourselves. Where we live, in this violent Middle East neighborhood, we must be strong to defend ourselves. I think that the government, I don't want to say politics, but I, as a mourn father, I didn't want any of this to happen. I was sitting peacefully and I said, I hope no one will be killed in both sides. I don't want any Palestinian to be killed. I want my son to be safe. I want their sons to be safe.
So what is your message to Prime Minister Netanyahu tonight?
No, my message, I am not a politician. My message is that every one of our sons is a child that must be protected. We would like to make a very peace with all our neighbors, but to make peace you need two. And I am afraid that in this neighborhood we must be strong and defend ourselves, because the other side doesn't seem to be care to his children as we do.
Mr. Shaw, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Well, the other conflict in this region, with roots stretching back all the way to World War I, of course, is Iraq. Today, the Kurds called for an uprising against the militants of the Islamic State after they lost important towns to them. In an Islamic State propaganda video, another young British man, seen here on horseback, appears to have signed up to the so-called brutal holy war. Monikered Abu Abdullah al-Habashi, he features in a video of gun-toting men and young boys claiming to live a life of peace and security.
I'm from the UK. My name is Abu Abdullah al-Habashi. We don't need any democracy, we don't need any communism, we don't need anything like that. All we need is Sharia.
Well, there'll be more from us here in Jerusalem later in the programme, but now over to Kathy at Westminster Abbey.
Thanks, Krish. Well, later this evening, a special service